Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
So somebody in the modern pop world that has been vocal about the satanic influence that is rife within particularly pop music and witchcraft, as he calls it, is Shane Lynch of Boyzone. And I have to admit, like, when this guy first popped up on the scene, talking all this sort of witchcraft, Illuminati stuff, I did tend to think pretty much the same as I thought with Coco. It's like, I see, you've run out of ideas, have you? Like, this is
right.
This is the lane that you're going to choose now, is it? But again, who can say? He's mentioned stuff, and he's got a book basically that mentions certain things. And for a short time, he was sort of bouncing around, being interviewed by a lot of different people. There's a video out called "They Controlled Me." Shane Lynch exposes music industry witchcraft and secrets, and in this he explains a lot of his beliefs. But the long and short of it is, he became a born-again Christian. Well, he actually came from a Christian background anyway, but then decided to sort of rebel against it in his teens. And he said that he got, in his own words, deeply involved in satanic stuff and dark spiritualism for a period from around 1997 to 1999, which also included dabbling in the occult, clairvoyance, and Ouija boards. Yeah, okay, clairvoyance. I mean, what does he mean? What does he mean by that? Like, you've got to remember, this is at the time when the BBC were also promoting this type of arcane, like Satanism, with Mystic Meg every Saturday night.
That's where my brain went. Amazing.
But who knows what he meant? But basically, he's described the industry as a dark and horrible world, like absolutely rife with what he calls witchcraft. Apparently, he became a Christian in 2003, explaining that his understanding of the demonic side of the music industry led him to seek a relationship with God. And he views his faith as having literally saved his life. Like, he's a little bit John Todd, really, to be quite honest. Like, but, well, the story, not the stuff that John Todd, there's no massive gotcha coming here. So Lynch has made several controversial claims, mostly regarding the presence of witchcraft in the modern music industry and specifically pop culture. And he has the receipts to prove it. I believe most of this comes from his book and then repeated in various interviews. He says that he was once at a super demonic album launch party, which was held, Brent, at a big mansion.
Oh, okay. More details?
No, that's it. But the mansion was big and the album launch party was evidently super demonic. So, he believes that the music. Yeah, I know it's not the smoking gun that we hope for, is it? If we're brutally honest, but that's not everything. He believes that the music industry is a dark place, and he says that there's demonic influence that comes demonically from the top. Technically, it should come from the bottom, actually. But from
the depths of hell.
But here's one thing: he does claim to have witnessed satanic rituals where albums were prayed over to ensure success. He doesn't elaborate. He just says that he's witnessed these satanic rituals. Now, some might say, but that's what John Todd said, and John Todd is a liar. But who knows? Maybe Shane Lynch from Boyzone has witnessed this. Anyway, He argues as well, and see if this sounds familiar, that many artists' stage shows aren't actually just sort of like, for fun or for entertainment. They're actually elaborate satanic rituals that are performed live in front of thousands of people without the audience realizing it. And it's difficult at this point to think whether he's come to this on his own or whether he's basically just been looking at the sort of vigilant citizen shit, like the Mark Dice stuff. Every like Super Bowl is somehow a satanic ritual. Every MTV Music Awards is somehow a satanic ritual. Every televised event is somehow a satanic ritual. Sometimes even sort of concerts themselves are considered to be satanic rituals. And sometimes like people will take it back. Like what was the Mark Dice said that she was a Babylonian queen or something like that. But it's always thin like that. They'll never show like, look, here's the satanic grimoire where it says that this is the spell that is being cast out. Here is the bit where you can like tie it back to an actual piece of ceremonial magic or something. They never give you a source. They just say it looks kind of satanic. And if we're being brutally honest, like the type of satanic that we're on about is Venom type of satanic, horror film satanic. It's not based on
Church of Satan.
Yeah, exactly. Like it really isn't. But anyway, Lynch has got a real bee in his bonnet for one particular person. Well, many, but one person that he's mentioned and is accused of using 2 or 3 different demonic rituals in her concerts, including pentagrams and fire ceremonies, which were presented to the public merely as art, but actually like, ways of sort of showing allegiance to Satan and actually sort of magically influencing the audience. Can we guess who it is that he's particularly cross with? I mean, there's a few. It's Taylor Swift. Like he's angry at Taylor Swift. Like, so, I mean, I don't know. The thing that immediately comes to my mind is like, well, yeah, of course, she's the most famous person on the planet. If you were to mention her, you might get some attention, particularly if someone responds. Anyhow, Boyzone Shane Lynch also appeared on there's a show on RTE called The Ray Darcy Show, which is basically on Saturdays, and he wanted to discuss his faith, and he said that without his faith, maybe I would not be here today. I grew up in a household of Catholicism for sure. We went to maths on a Sunday. Not maths. But when I left all that, I went to England and music. I became very anti-Christ. I got deep involved in the occult, witchcraft, that kind of stuff. He went on to say that basically at this time he had been in a bad, troubled place. But thankfully, someone that can only be referred to as a giant in the world of rock and roll stepped in to save Shane Lynch. And he's very lucky that this person was there. And I think it's somebody that we all know, a very familiar household name. Do you want to have a guess?
Brian Harvey.
No, although that would be marvelous, wouldn't it? Brian Harvey, poor son, can't help himself. How's he going to help like Boyzone, especially seeing as they're rivals, like for Christmas number ones? So no, have another go. Think like worldwide recognition.
Donovan.
No, that would be interesting. That would be the thing. No, he said through a friend of mine.
Oh, Bono.
Not Bono. No, sadly not Bono. No.
Oh,
we're talking.
Kanye.
No, not Kanye. No. I honestly don't think that you'll get
James Hetfield.
No, not James Hetfield, although that would be very cool. It's the singer Ben Afoido. Ben Afoido. The bloke that does the vocals in Fats and Small. Yes, he stepped in, and without him, there might not be a Shane Lynch today. He said, through a friend of mine, a guy in a band called Fats and Smalls, he showed me a different light and showed me his mannerisms in life. And they did the only thing that they could do. Like, when you've got two colossuses of the industry, Shane Lynch, who used to be in Boyzone, and Benno Feuedo from Fats and Smalls. What do you think it was that they did? It's obvious when you think about it, like particularly when you want to fight against the satanic music industry and like move yourself away from the witchcraft that you've been witnessing, people putting curses on records and mansion parties with really, really demonic things in really, really big mansions. Like what is it that these two giants of the industry could do?
Start a podcast or write a book?
No, not quite. They formed a rap rock group called Red Hill.
Oh, close.
Yeah. So
that's the next stage. The next stage is starting the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so sadly, Red Hill, and I don't know why, because it did contain the man called Ben from Fats and Small, and also one of the guys that used to sort of dance at the back at Boyzone. But somehow this rap rock group never really seemed to sort of take off. But hey ho, what can you do? But he spoke to newlife.co.uk, and he explained how in his sensational new autobiography, which is where most of this stuff comes from, and again, this must raise the question, you've got a book to sell. Is that really what it is? Apparently, he had his first experience with the occult at just 14. Once, a supernatural force caused the bed that he was sitting on to float. I know.
Shit.
Exactly. And he says that mediums and psychics struggled to help him, and he believed that he was possessed by an evil spirit. And it was, all of these people couldn't help him. So thank God that Ben from Fats and Small was able to get through to him. It's incredible. So in his book, Shane Lynch, The Chancer, how ironic, the hitmaker reveals, a lot of the time I felt as if I'd fallen into hell. There was nothing but blackness. I knew I was in deep trouble. But Shane, now a fully committed Christian, had his first supernatural experience when he was on holiday with his family in the picturesque Irish town, Terryglass. He says, I was 14 years old and we created this homemade Ouija board. We put a coin down on it and my sisters spoke to what they assumed was some sort of spirit, asking it questions. I remember one thing. It was a couple of words that the movement of the coin spelt out on the board. It said, kill Shane. And I freaked out. And he also gave further details to former EDL knobhead Liam Tufts. And highlights of this fascinating interview include him saying, I sense that there's a dark undertone to the industry. There's a massive dark undertone to the industry, and you can get sucked into it. You can stay on the outskirts of it, but the governing body of the industry is pretty damn dark. He also said, but then go over to the other side, which I'll bring it out with your Beyoncés and your Taylor Swifts and all like that. Not to go dark straight away, but it's right in front of you. You're looking at people doing live witchcraft on stage. Live spiritual performances on stage, live demonic performances on stage to all of our children. And it's just a performance. What's the problem? It's just a hood. What's the problem? It's just a pentagram on the ground. What's the problem? But they're doing live stuff in front of us. It is a big problem. And we're just going, it's a performance, isn't it? It's all very subtle indoctrination, like you say. It's just an innocent hood or subtle signs of devil worship and little things like that I see. I mean, some of the things that Sam Smith has done. I mean, what's your take on him as a man with such influence, says Liam. And he says, all these characters in the industry like Sam Smith, you just have to look at them and them now. They didn't decide just to be straight out of the box devil horns and craziness. They were bought into this more and more because it sells. It sells and they want to make sales. And I don't mean they sell your soul to the devil, but a lot of them talk about it. A lot of it's generally witchcraft. They get into witchcraft. They get into that. And once you're inside of that kind of witchcraft scenario, it's hard to come back. And I was there. And that's the only reason I can really talk about this, because the dark times I'm talking about, I was into witchcraft. I was into all the dark stuff that the industry was in. That kind of 1997 to 1998 into 1999 I got darker and darker into spiritualism stuff, the dark nature of the industry. And that's how I know it's real. If I was just talking off the cuff, not being experienced in it, then fair enough. But no, I was deeply involved in witchcraft in those days. He goes on. Witchcraft is everything. It's culty madness, but it's also innocently presented to you. So tarot cards, spiritual healers, Ouija boards, palm reading, any white witch spells, everything that the kind of like, hey, let me just bring it to even Harry Potter, for example. It's only a film. What's the problem with Harry Potter? But it's witchcraft. So the more we accept witchcraft in a soft nature is the more our kids are grown into the now accepting witchcraft in a deeper nature. And this might sound mad, but going into your yoga practices and all that kind of stuff, they're all deities of the underworld that people are tapping into. And the underworld is something that you don't want to fuck with. You really don't want to fuck with. And he says, and see if this sounds familiar, because some of us might realize that we're really getting into John Todd, Jack Chick territory here. He says that the ultimate plan is for demons to hide God from you or to mock God. And he says, I would wake up in the middle of the night in a paralytic state. My eyes would open and I could see demonic things within the room and stuff like that. But I couldn't move and I couldn't move my mouth. Like, come on. I mean, for somebody who is apparently so incredibly experienced in it, which is why he's got the ability to tell people these stories that coincidentally sound exactly the same as the stories that Jack Chick was selling and that have been on the internet all over the place for years and years and years. He doesn't have a huge amount of detail. In fact, he doesn't have any detail at all. It's a bit nonsense. I mean, it sounds like he got freaked out doing a Ouija board when he was about 14. He's got some incredible guilt about religion and coming from a religious background, and probably because he's done quite a lot of sort of drink and drugs and fornication when he was in a boy band. I don't know. What do you reckon, Brent? Sounds silly to me.
Yep. No, I agree.
It just sounds like he's got a book to sell. He's got nothing else to do. He really wants to sort of sell his faith. It's almost like he's sort of convinced. I don't know. It's strange. It's almost like he's trying to convince himself more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, in that position as well, like there was a period of time where, I became very fundamentalist in my Christianity, and I also looked at astrology and yoga and all these things as if they were evil. So I kind of convinced myself that they were all bad because they were all not from God, allegedly.
Well, he's even saying Harry Potter.
He has kind of, it's all the same. It's a similar sort of thing. It's a narrative.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember it. I remember it, like hiding occult symbology in like fashion and things like that.
Yeah.
Softening people up to the concept of the devil, softening people up to the concept of ghosts and spirituality. I even remember people saying things like Casper the Friendly Ghost is a way to teach children to speak to demons. Yeah. And stuff like that. But that is very much the territory that he's actually
surface level, though, isn't it? It's just
exactly
to say about something on the surface if you were framing it. But yeah, I also do agree. I do think he's just trying to sell a book, because I remember the kind of first stuff that he was saying when he first came out, because I was still a truther when he first came out, and he progressively told more as he had more interviews.
Oh, did he?
In the same way that it seems like this Coco's going to do.
Yeah. Like she's sort of feeling out the ground and sort of adding bits onto a sort of...
Yeah.
And when you're in the thing, you'll either delude yourself that I'm not modifying it for the audience. Like my view is being modified as my research becomes deeper or whatever. And it's like, is it though? Is that true? But so anyway, one of the major things that he's sort of really upset about was Ouija boards. And so I had a bit of a look into Ouija boards, basically. And apparently, like, the first sort of usage of them, or the first sort of what would be considered modern Ouija boards, because there's been sort of like people trying to channel spirits and talk to spirits and see the future and speak to the dead since people have come up with the concept of spirits and the dead, basically. And there's innumerate sort of rituals. But when we're talking about specifically a board, apparently the first sort of knowledge of modern Ouija boards were spiritualists in the United States was essentially going around to different sort of camps in the sort of like in Ohio, apparently in 1886, and it was fashionable at the time for people to speak to the dead, like, or to try and communicate with spirits. It was almost seen as a science, essentially. Now, this is very obviously like a bit of depends how you want to look at it. It's either a way for these spiritualists to channel this in a very sort of like utilizing a tool in a way that basically gets it to the consumer in an understandable way, or it's a con, but who knows. But apparently, following the Ouija board's commercial patent by businessman Elijah Bond in 1891, the Ouija board was regarded as an innocent parlor game, and it wasn't really connected with the occult. Just speaking with the dead, it wasn't seen as like a nefarious thing until an American spiritualist called Pearl Curran popularized its use as a divining tool during World War One. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to speak to their dead relatives, and this is where it gets popular. Anything that becomes popular, somebody all of a sudden says, "Damn, that's obviously bad." But do you know who owns or has the patent to the name Ouija board?
Mattel?
It's not Mattel. It's Hasbro. But
Hasbro,
yeah, but the toy company, absolutely, yeah. Apparently, it was previously owned by someone called Parker Brothers, and then basically this was inherited by Hasbro. But yeah, so Ouija boards are a toy. Like, interestingly, in the film The Exorcist, Reagan gets possessed by using a Ouija board. But the reason she's using a Ouija board is because they're toys. They were toys. So a lot of people have sort of, in the scientific community, have basically said that Ouija boards are nonsense. They're explained by unconscious movements of those controlling the pointer, which is a psychophysiological phenomenon known as the idiometer effect. So essentially, even unknowns to yourself, you do micro movements in order to make certain things happen. It's not dissimilar from what's the thing that you do with where you're looking for water with the poles.
Divining rod.
That's it. Yeah, it's all that sort of shit. But there was somebody who
Dowsing.
That's it. Dowsing. Called. Yeah, thank you. But there was one person. Well, there's lots of people, but there was one person who you might be a bit surprised was actually somewhat of a fan of Ouija boards. And this either speaks to potentially the reality of Ouija boards, or potentially speaks the other way and suggests that maybe this person, despite his reputation, didn't actually know as much as he thought.
Stephen Hawking?
That would be interesting. If Stephen Hawking was a fan of Ouija boards, that would be interesting. Yeah, no, it wasn't Stephen Hawking. No, it was Aleister Crowley, and Aleister Crowley was so fond of Ouija boards that he even wanted to release his own branded board. He said, "There is, however, a good way of using this instrument to get what you want, and that is to perform the whole operation in a consecrated circle, so that undesirable aliens cannot interfere with it. Then you should employ the proper magical invocation in order to get your circle just the one spirit you want. It is comparatively easy to do this. A few simple instructions are all that is necessary, and I shall be pleased to give these free of charge to anyone who cares to apply." Although, sadly, his business plan to mass market a Crowley branded Ouija style board never really went anywhere. But hey ho, it is what it is. But it's interesting that he sort of found them useful because, as I say, does that mean that, well, it means one of two things. Either that basically, well, it could mean that Ouija boards are actually useful in divining spirits, because if anyone was to know, it would be Aleister Crowley. Or it could be an indication that Aleister Crowley was potentially fooling himself and everybody throughout the years. Like, who can say? Like, or it could fall, as always, somewhere in the middle. Anyway, the interview carries on because, yeah, remember, we're actually following this interview between Garth and Coco Ryder. But here we go. So Garth carries on. Do you believe that some of the big names, probably some of the big names, do you who do know what's happening? Because I'm thinking in terms of obviously the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger. I remember hearing from people who had first-hand experience where they said that Mick Jagger basically walks into the dressing room, essentially a man in his 80s, and he walks out completely different. So it's almost like he goes in and does some ritual, and they don't know what it is, but he walks out, and he's the guy that you see prancing around on the stage, who's a completely different character. Do you think he would know what he's doing then? And we'll come back to that in a minute. Coco says, well, I do think Mick is definitely into some very dark ritualistic stuff. I think some of them definitely are definitely into it. Oh, so she's not going to explain the dark ritualistic stuff. No, that's it. Forget that.
And also, I think.
Yeah, like, hey ho. I think that some of them definitely are into it, but you can't expect every artist or entertainer to be into the occult or even to believe in the occult. But that doesn't mean that they don't have occult power that the occultists can use and utilize and harness. Some of them are definitely into it. I would say that especially in today's world, when it's become so clear and so obvious in the message of the music industry, that more and more young people are like thinking, oh, I know that they're into, and now I want to sell my soul. Now I want to do this because I've seen the music videos and where they're doing all this crazy ritualistic stuff. So they're making it more apparent and more obvious. She gives absolutely no examples of what this agenda is or which videos in which this happens. And also, I'd point out that videos are almost completely obsolete at this point. Aside from like quite underground artists, no one really gives a shit about music videos anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't really think that's a thing. Yeah, and she doesn't explain any of this sort of dark ritualistic stuff. Anyway, she goes on, and this is why a lot more of the young entertainers and artists are not very interesting people. They don't have the same spark that the people had in the past, because these people are going into it like, yeah, I want to sell my soul to the devil, and I want to be part of this stuff so I can have all the riches. But in the past, it was more like people within the industry were seeking out special individuals who had a special light, who were born under a certain astrological position. She doesn't elaborate on who. That gives them power to influence millions of people with just their voice. So let's just get it straight. There's two types of people that get into the music industry. Okay, the music industry that she tried to get into and that Gareth also tried to get into. There's two types. People who are not very interesting but offer to sell their soul up front and therefore are sort of taken on board by the industry. Or people, I remember she was one of these people who are like special, sort of like born under a special light, who are born under specific astrological styles that have a certain charisma with them, which means that their sort of energies can affect millions of people. Huh. Could I just say, you know, when you say like, oh God, these musicians today, they're all so boring and they're all so soulless. They're also like, I just don't get what they're trying to say. Like, it might be that they've all sold their souls, and so that's why they've been given the opportunities in the music industry. And it might be, and I'm just going to put this out there, it might be that you've got old. And the music that is marketed at teenagers doesn't make sense to you. I'm sorry, but it's finally happened. You're stood there screaming, what's this racket? What are they going on about? Can't understand a bleeding word they're going on about. What are you wearing? Look at what, like, oh, is that supposed to be how you play a guitar nowadays? Is it? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, and also, like, people going back to Gareth, Mick Jagger, I know people that say he walks in there a little old man and then he walks out there ready for showtime. And it's like, well, A, I don't believe you. I don't believe you know anybody that's told you that. And anybody that has told you that is lying. But could it be that maybe that they're kind of exaggerating, and he goes and has a bit of a stretch, bit of a limber, gets a bit psyched up before he gets himself into the zone, you know?
Get some multivitamin jabs in him.
Get some multivitamin jabs, you know. I mean, we know the Rolling Stones used to be. It was no snow, no show. Now I'm pretty sure he doesn't do that, but like that would have a certain exuberant effect on a gentleman. So this is just bullshit. It's absolute bullshit, to be quite honest. But yeah, nonsense. So anyway, the Rolling Stones, which they just say Mick Jagger's evil, and like, yeah, I know people that say Mick Jagger. It's almost like he's under some sort of form of mind control. Like it's crazy, and they miss all the actual stuff that is in the conspiracy world about the Rolling Stones, which is essentially they had an album that was called Their Satanic Majesty's Request, and that's got the word Satan in it. And you know, and this came out in 1967. The actual song, the title, is a play on the official wording found inside British passports, which reads Her Britannic Majesty's Request and Requires. And they thought that this was funny because it was supposed to be like a sort of the dark side of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So they did the Satanic Majesty's Request. And in it, Jagger's wearing a sort of wizard's hat on the front cover. And they also had songs like, they had an album called Goat's Head Soup, and goats are obviously satanic. And, you know, there you go. And they did songs like Paint It Black, which is about painting things black, and Sympathy for the Devil, which is about having sympathy for the devil, all of which is the, you know, clear indication of deeply invested time in the occult and satanic practice. There is something that is talked about quite a lot, though, which is the Altamont Free Concert, and this was it was a concert that was headlined by the Rolling Stones in December 1969 at the Altamont Speedway in Northern California, and it was supposed to be a Woodstock of the West. It was supposed to sort of rival Woodstock and be very cool and very hippie-ish, and it didn't go down that way. And essentially, it was full of violence. It culminated in the death of one patron, and was seen as some as being a sort of symbolic end of the sort of 60s counterculture movement. And so sort of theorists like Dave McGowan have said that this was organized. This was, again, almost like a sort of ritual to end the hippie movement, which had been kind of spiritually uplifting. They wanted to destroy that. And I think the next part of it was introducing prog rock, which, you know, dampened everyone's spirits. So anyway, one of the worst decisions that was made at Altamont was the hiring of the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang to provide security. They gave them $500 worth of beer, and also someone supplied them with a bug-a-ton of acid that was laced with speed. And this all sort of led to a bit of a difficult situation. You see, the Hells Angels, not only were they not classically trained security guards, they were more of a sort of motorcycle gang. And they decided that the best technique to sort of keep the crowd in line was to take sawn off ends of snooker cues and to beat anybody that even looked at them wrong wildly around the face and neck with them until, you know, they passed out due to blood loss. The crowd were all fucked up. Everyone was fucked up. There's a huge amount of people on the bill: Santana, Jefferson Airplane, Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Grateful Dead. It was the Grateful Dead who'd actually said, you know what I think is a good idea? You should hire the Hells Angels as security. It turned out to be very much a not good idea. They'd actually had a different sort of experience. They'd hired a UK chapter, and for whatever reason, that had gone essentially without a hitch. The Grateful Dead actually, they thought better of it. They saw the violence sort of happening and the crowd getting worse and worse and worse, and they refused to play, and they just like buggered off, and so they didn't actually end up playing to the audience. Now, the disorder reached its tragic climax during the Rolling Stones' performance of Under My Thumb, when an 18-year-old audience member, Meredith Hunter, who had reportedly high out of his mind on amphetamines and was carrying a revolver, became involved in an altercation with the Angels near the stage. He drew his gun, and then he was tackled, and he was fatefully stabbed a number of times by Hells Angels member Alan Passaro. And all of this was caught on film during... There's a film called Gimme Shelter, which covers the entire sort of concert, and in it you can clearly see it happening. Now, the rumor for years and years and years was that this actually happened during the song "Sympathy for the Devil," and that this was all part of a ritual. Whether the Rolling Stones were in on it or not, it was debated. Although I believe that Mick Jagger was wearing sort of black and white, sort of like a jumpsuit type thing with a cape on the back of it. And now, if it was, which obviously has fed into the rumors that he was being some sort of high magician at the time. Now, if they were part of a ritual, apparently Keith Richards wasn't to know about this, because he tried to get away and he didn't want to play, and somebody pulled a gun on him and made it perfectly clear that they were very happy to use this if Keith Richards didn't get back on stage and play the gig that had been promised. But there's also another figure that is connected to the Rolling Stones that was heavily influential, particularly in their turn towards the darker side, to the embracing of certain occultic themes. And that was the former girlfriend of Brian Jones, connected to Coco, who then ended up going out with Keith Richards, Anita Pallenberg. And Anita Pallenberg has been described as the witch who changed the Rolling Stones. And this is from an article of the same name. At the center, like a phoenix on her nest of flames, Marianne Faithfull writes, was the wicked Anita. She was the most incredible woman I'd ever met in my life. Dazzling, beautiful, hypnotic, and unsettling. Her smile, those carnivorous teeth, obliterated everything. Other women evaporated around her. This was the enigmatic Anita Pallenberg, and when she met the Rolling Stones backstage in Munich in 1965, she changed the band forever. Anita Pallenberg scared the pants off me, Keith Richards wrote of his former wife. She knew everything, and she could say it in 5 languages. You knew you were taking on a Valkyrie, she who decides who dies in battle. Well, it was Brian Jones who first laid eyes on her, called her an angel, and immediately confessed, I don't know who you are, but I need you. Her tangled personal relationships with the band are a tale for another day, because beyond the tragedy of spurned love was a wider sweeping influence, the introduction of occultism. After all, when a band becomes awed by a self-professed witch, how on earth could things remain the same? Pallenberg was born in Nazi-occupied Rome in 1942. When her father returned from the war, she was already 3, and he sent her off to boarding school in Germany. So from an early age, her independence and cultural grasp were already present. After being expelled from school when she was 16, she quickly mingled with the Dolce Vita crowd in Rome. She inspired the band to write tracks like Sympathy for the Devil, and later played a hand in the terror of Gimme Shelter. This brooding sense of stark spiritualism was something she was happy to admit to. I had an interest in witchcraft, she admitted, in Buddhism, in the black magicians that my friend Kenneth Anger introduced me to. The world of the occult fascinated me. And we remember Kenneth Anger was the gentleman that was involved in Lucifer Rising. However, film director Anger would later say that the influence was largely the other way around. I believe that Anita is, for want of a better word, he said at the time, a witch. She initially went out with Brian Jones, but he hit her in Morocco, and Keith Richards started a relationship with her. Tony Sanchez's account of his time as Richards' bodyguard and drug dealer mentions Pallenberg's spiritual practices. She was obsessed with black magic and began to carry a string of garlic with her everywhere, even to bed. Sanchez goes on to describe Pallenberg as having been like a life force, a woman so powerful, so full of strength and determination that men came to lean on her. In 1968, Kenneth Anger also found himself in London, still trying to get Lucifer Rising made. And it was in this circle that Anger met the rock band the Rolling Stones, and he became friends with Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and their respective girlfriends, Marianne Faithfull and Anita Pallenberg. And at this point, Jagger became intrigued by the sort of the occultism that Kenneth Anger was peddling. And he thought that essentially this could be sort of included in the counterculture, and it could be sort of like, inspirational to the youth. So anyway, this is exactly at the time when he's trying to get Lucifer Rising made, and he tried to make Mick Jagger take on the role of Lucifer for the film, and he was tempted to it, and he actually went and made some music for it whilst he sort of got his head around trying to prepare for the role. And he used a Moog synthesizer, those really annoying. Well, yeah, he's responsible for the synth laden track of the film. The film that was actually produced was called Invocation of My Demon Brother rather than Lucifer Rising. Lucifer Rising was later produced, but this was the one that involved Mick Jagger, and it had Mick Jagger in it. And if you remember earlier, we were saying that Bobby Beausoleil and Anton LaVey were in a scene. This was the film that they were in. And this was it, essentially. So those are the sort of occultic connections to the Rolling Stones, is that people suggest that Anita Pallenberg was a witch. She introduced him to Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger got Mick Jagger to be involved in the Invocation of My Demon Brother soundtrack, and also to appear in the film. And again, she also influenced them with various songs like Sympathy for the Devil and Paint It Black and such like that. So, but anyway, the interview goes, they don't talk about any of that, because why would you want to know things? So Garth says, so that's interesting, because I think in terms of someone like, I guess, Taylor Swift now, Taylor Swift is the one who is just a behemoth. And when he says that, I don't think he means like a behemoth, like a sort of demon or whatever, although put a pin in that. He means that she's huge. And when I say huge, I mean, as a selling artist, not a critique of her figure. He says, I don't think I can think of someone else really at the moment that is at her level in terms of the size that she can just sell out multiple nights at football stadiums like Wembley Stadium, 30 nights in a row. Like, it's insane numbers of people. Why do you, why do you think, what do you believe the goal of all of this is? Why do you think the dark arts are so interested in essentially taking over someone like Mick Jagger or Taylor Swift? Are they just using them, do you think, as a conduit to essentially get to the real target, which is me and you, our kids and our future generations? Like, sorry, they're using Mick Jagger still to get to our kids and our future generations. Like, fucking hell, the poor guy. Like, give him a time. Again, this is such circular logic as well. It's like, well, I think they're demonic and they do really well. So obviously there's some sort of demonic purpose about this. It could be capitalism or entertainment or anything like that. No, it's got to be something really, really sinister. What do you think? Again, what's happening?
It's kind of sinister.
Well, yeah. What's happening at a Donovan concert then? Or a Happy Mondays concert? Like, are they involved as well? Or are those the people that don't know about the occult but are being used by the occult? And if they're in the industry, right, actually in the industry, as opposed to sort of like a satellite to the industry like these two, how come they don't know about it? Like, none of it really hangs together when you sort of like start pulling on any individual threads, really. Anyway, Coco goes on. Yeah, that's it, basically. I think really, though, at the very essence of it, people want meaning in their life. Listen to this. I think at the very essence of it, people want meaning in their life, and it gives people meaning to be part of this vast conspiracy and do these terrible things. Oh, she was so close. She was so close to having a massive personal revelation there, and she just missed the last part, isn't it? Right? Okay. Yeah, she's looking for meaning. Like everyone's looking for meaning. And then, of course, you have the people who are part of these bloodlines, and they grow up in situations that are really awful, and they experience awful trauma-based mind control, and they experience all these horrible things, and they really don't have much of a choice in the direction that they went, you know. But in general, I think people who join these groups and these occult groups, which he doesn't explain which occult groups, and get involved in these criminal networks, they really want meaning in their life. They want to feel important. They want to feel special. And that's why this, again, she's so close to having a massive realization there. And that's why there's so many of these TV series and movies coming out these days about joining secret societies or becoming a special agent. What TV shows? What TV shows are there about joining a secret society or being a special agent? I don't know any. Like, whatever. There's bound to be some, but like, fucking hell. Anyway. And it makes them, if someone comes to you and say, hey, I'd like you to do these things for me. I'd like you to be part of our little secret group and do these things for me. It makes people feel special. It gives them meaning. But yes, you said something interesting about eventually how all this will be, is to gain control and power over the rest of the world. It's like with the monarch mind control and MKUltra programs. Everything that they do to their targets and the individuals that are in their immediate life, they eventually do on the rest of the world. And that's what the COVID lockdowns were. It was essentially MKUltra mind control done on a mass scale. Now, as somebody that has a passing interest in MKUltra mind control, right? It really, really wasn't. It's absolutely nothing to do with anything like that, or conformity, or the Milgram experiment and how people will submit to authority. It's none of that. This is just bullshit. This is just people trying to fit frameworks of understanding about something that happened in their life where they felt panicked because they had no control, and they had no control over the pandemic. But you can't really rage against a pandemic, can you? So you rage against something that you also feel that you have no control over, which is measures that have been put in place to help people with the pandemic. And rather than just act like an adult and go, part of being an adult is, remember that was the sort of thing that was just a given. Part of being an adult is that sometimes you have to do things that you don't really want to do for all sorts of reasons. Right, that seems to have been lost on fucking everybody in the world at this point. But it's easier to go, oh no, I'm not having a tantrum. I'm not acting like a spoilt child. No, I'm pointing out that this is the slippery slope to some sort of totalitarianism, and evidently, you know, mass extermination of people by the Illuminati. It's definitely not them just having a tantrum. Anyway, it was essentially MKUltra done on a mass scale. They use artists, they use their voice, they use their image, and they use their music, and they use them to basically lead the human race down the path that they want them to go down. Right. So we're not going to talk about MKUltra here. Like, we will talk about that in the future at some point. But they know fuck all about it. So what they are sort of referencing somewhat here is mind control in the music industry. And this all comes from a sort of rather convoluted idea that anybody in the industry at a certain level must be mind controlled in order to spread a certain message. And immediately some of you might be going, what's the point of that? There are so many people that want to be pop stars that could be easily controlled just by giving them money or attention, or the promise of money or attention that never actually sort of materializes, that you could get them to literally do anything. Why would you need to mind control people? And that's a very good point that is rarely touched on. It's tied in with this concept. It's tied in with several things, and very few of them make sense. One is a concept of presidential model mind controls or monarch sex slaves. And this comes from two sources, books by Kathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor, both who claim to have been part of this. They were mind controlled and used as sex slaves for celebrities, politicians, and musicians, and also as sort of spies in various ways that tie in with actual sort of supposed experiments that were done in MKUltra. The long and short of it is that they were told that there were several things. They're always blonde. They are to be used as sex slaves for the rich and powerful willy-nilly. And there are certain things that would trigger them and would be in order to flip them into prostitute mode. And there were things like what's called kitten sex slave programming, which isn't really a thing, but it's essentially the idea that anything that looks vaguely like a cat or has animal print on it is a way to trigger somebody's multiple personality. And so whenever you see a picture of Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera or any pop star, Miley Cyrus, or any of these that have got cat ears or fur or anything like that, this is all an indication that they're monarch sex slaves. And it relies on you basically not only believing the Kathy O'Brien stories, which basically have zero evidence to back them up, but you also have to believe the dot connecting that other people have done on the internet. There's not really a source to a huge amount of this. It sort of took on a life of its own, and people started to spot things like the eyes, like devil horns, like references to astrological signs and things like that. Anything that could be tied back, even doves and things like that were tied back to Satan worship, because the Latin for dove is Column, and Column sounds like Columbia, and Columbia is actually a representative of the goddess Semiramis and such like this. So almost anything can be seen as an indication of mind control, essentially. And there was another element that didn't really make sense, because essentially this is nothing to do with the music industry, but it was tied to this, and that is Disney. And essentially it seems to boil down to this: various people that went on to be stars, including Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, JC Chazes of NSYNC, and Ryan Gosling, for no reason at all, because he's not a singer, he's an actor, were all in the Mickey Mouse Club. And this is seen as suspicious. Why is it seen as suspicious? Well, for two very, very silly reasons. Disney is considered to be two things. One, part of the globalist New World Order system, but this is for something that doesn't necessarily match up with other aspects of it. According to the myth, or according to the theory, that he was virulently pro-Hitler and anti-Semitic, which obviously some people will be going, hang on, that doesn't work, because I thought it was Jews that were behind everything. It's like, it is sometimes, but other times it's Nazis. Like when we're talking about Operation Paperclip or anything like that, the NASA, then suddenly Nazis are bad. In other occasions, Nazis are sometimes good and sometimes were tricked. And it very much depends on who you're speaking to at the time. But here's the stupid thing, right? Okay, if you ask most people, there's even jokes in Family Guy about it. Like he wakes up from cryogenics and asks if the Jews are all dead yet. And because they're not, he goes back to sleep and says, wait a minute, when the Jews are all dead. Walt Disney. There's this colossal idea that he was pro-Hitler, and there's the one in American Dad. That's the bubblegum machine that Henry Ford gave to Walt Disney, and there's all these ideas that basically mean that anyone connected to Disney must be bad. Also, ideas of Freemasonry. There's the 32 Club or whatever that's in Disney that may or may not be connected to concepts of Freemasonry. But apparently, according to like friends of his, like the Sherman brothers, who were Jewish composers that worked with him, they saw no signs of anti-Semitism at all. What apparently it comes from is, well, a couple of things. There are certain stereotypical sort of depictions of people in Disney cartoons, but it doesn't just run to Jews. There's also a lot of stereotypical depictions of people of color. Like, I mean, the obvious one is the crows in Jim Crow, the crows in fucking is it Dumbo? I forget. Now, was he racist? According to modern sensibilities, yes. According to the Times, probably a bit. Like, but what is true is that latterly sort of certain stereotypical characters were taken out of Disney, but that is one reason why people suspected that he might have been. Also, it was his association with a group called the MPA. Now, the MPA, or the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of Our American Ideals, it was an anti-communist group, and a lot of their values were very anti-Semitic as well, because it tied in these concepts as well. As we've talked about many times, that communism was sometimes seen as a Jewish plot, particularly by people connected to, say, the John Birch Society and stuff like that, and other groups. What was that big one? The Nazis. That was it. And he was, but the argument is made that he wasn't aware that they were anti-Semitic, and he didn't care that they were anti-communist. He was a member of them because they were anti-union, and he wanted to destroy workers' rights, which doesn't make him a Nazi, but does make him a wanker. So there is that. Although there is one other thing that in 1938, a month after Kristallnacht, Walt Disney gave a personal tour of his studio to the filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl. Yeah, and Leni Riefenstahl was obviously, for people that don't know, the favoured director of Hitler that made various Nazi propaganda films, and so that was deemed as a bad idea. But here's the thing. He also did a huge amount of stuff for the war effort, anti-Hitler cartoons and such like that. So the actual evidence, like the truism that Walt Disney is definitely anti-Semite, or would even go further and say he's a Nazi, isn't actually true. He was probably a very unpleasant person, and he probably considered racist and probably anti-Semitic by today's standards. But this idea that he was firmly a sort of a fan of Hitler and a virulent anti-Semite isn't true. But the other thing is that basically he did work with the government and military. A lot of this, again, bizarrely happened with World War II. He was making propaganda and training films, morale boosters. There's a film called The Spirit of 43, which starred Donald Duck, which basically the point of this cartoon was to encourage Americans to pay more income tax and to buy war bonds, but it was technically for a good cause. But also Disney artists designed over 1,200 emblems and insignias for military units completely free of charge, which were displayed on aircraft jackets and other equipment. So, all those, the pictures that you have on the side, a lot of those were by Disney. He also collaborated with NASA. And he worked with German rocket scientist Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun is one of these people who was brought over, was a Nazi, and was brought over in the US with Operation Paperclip to essentially work on rocketry for the American government as part of and the justification for this was, well, if we don't pay him a huge amount of money, then the Russians will, and who knows what will happen then. Also, NASA were involved in the construction of certain rides at Epcot Center. And so these are the reasons that Disney is deemed as suspicious. And so basically anybody that has been involved with any aspect of Disney is open to the suggestion, if you'll pardon the pun, of being mind controlled by the conspiracy world.